That's where you were until he got obscured. That was Qualter Salles, the very personable Brazilian, charming young man who really has done a good job this year, has come up through the ranks a little bit both in Europe and in America, because he competed in the Indy Lights Championship last year, but he raced in the British Formula 3 Series as well a few years ago, and really is a very likeable fellow indeed. Speaks a number of foreign languages and always very civil to talk to. It's just a shame today that he didn't have the luck with the car when he was running in a good top 10 position. Scored some points last time out in Michigan as well, which was good news for the Davis Racing team. Let's just listen to that Ford Cosworth motor in the back of Andretti's car. Seems to be pulling pretty effectively at the moment. Michael now in 7th position with a few retirements. He's gradually working his way up, but it does appear that we're hearing from the teams that splash and goes are going to be the name of the game in the latter part of this race. It doesn't look as though many of these guys are going to be able to make it through without having to come in and put a bit of fuel on board, and that's not a great surprise. Really, that's what we've been expecting. What it could mean, of course, is we're going to see some big changes in the last few laps of this race.
Yeah, but, you know, as I just said, everybody except for Mauricio Gugelmin is on the same fuel strategy. So Gugelmin, I think, certainly is in to make up several positions here, and he could make up, I reckon he might finish as high as 6th. But I think the top 6 are going to be out of reach for him. And, you know, the way Alex Zanardi is going, no one's even getting close to him. He's got a 25-second lead almost. And Dario Franchitti in 3rd place is a whole 42 seconds behind.
I think a lot of these teams have been banking on another yellow flag to save the bacon. And I think that Zanardi and Ganassi have decided they cannot bank on a yellow flag. He's decided to go for it. I mean, the last few laps have just been incredibly fast from Zanardi. He's in the 1 minute 7s. He was in the 1 minute 8s last time around. But he's consistently quicker than anybody else. It looks to me as though they've made that decision. They've got to go for it. He's trying to open up enough of a buffer so that when he comes into the pits, even if there was then a yellow flag and Moore was able to get round without having to make another pit stop, that he would still have the lead of this race. It's interesting what the decisions they're having to make in the pits, and the yellow flags are just not happening for them. They're having to reassess their strategy. So there's Franchitti, 3rd place still for him. Pruitt in 4th place. Bobby Rahal still running well in 5th place. Oh dear.
I tell you what, I was just about to talk about Michel Jourdain Jr. Last time around, his lap was a 109.3. Actually, that was the quickest lap. No one was faster last time around. He'd made up a lot of ground on Andre Ribeiro. He's right behind him, just about to make a challenge. And there he is off on the grass. That's a great shame. The young Mexican was doing a fantastic job this afternoon.
Here go the first of the splash and dash manoeuvres. Jeremy, it's Scott Pruitt into the pits from 4th position. And we've got the clock running. It shouldn't be much fuel, but it's a fair bit, 8.4 seconds. It's still a fair chunk of time for Pruitt, and a fair bit of fuel going on board. That just gives you an idea of how little fuel they have for the latter part of this race. And there he's come out just ahead of Mauricio Gugelmin, who was running in 11th place. So Gugelmin, now the man who does not have to stop, but he's got Pruitt out ahead of him. I wonder if Gugelmin's going to be able to take advantage of this as Pruitt gets up to speed. Really, the Brazilian Mauricio Gugelmin needs to take this opportunity to get past him. He's got to do some serious overtaking in the latter part of this race, Gugelmin, if he's to take advantage of his different strategy. Climbing up the hill, didn't manage to take the advantage there.
And that's the race leader right behind him. We're looking now at the 2nd place car of Greg Moore, almost a half a minute behind, 28.3 seconds behind. We've got a full course yellow. That must be for Jourdain's car, I think, off the road. I think that was at the end of the straightaway. We're on board with Zanardi, and there ahead of him are Mauricio Gugelmin and Scott Pruitt.
Now then, this is interesting. What are they going to do? Because it gives an opportunity to make a pit stop, and in fact we're seeing quite a few guys come in. Will Zanardi come in? Yes, he will. Zanardi coming into the pits. The race leader deciding to take advantage of this yellow flag to come into the pits. You can see Michael Andretti, that is, just pulling out in front of him. Zanardi has to go right up to the other end of the pits. Ribeiro's already in. We just flashed past him. And this is Zanardi's final stop. Let's see. It shouldn't be much fuel. Well, no, he didn't need a lot, did he? Look at that. A very, very rapid stop. 5.4 seconds. The team's calculating how much fuel needed to be put aboard the car, and Zanardi making a very quick stop indeed and not losing any ground at all. Greg Moore comes past us, and Zanardi still with a very healthy lead. But it's interesting, Jeremy, Greg Moore not coming into the pits there. Maybe he's hoping that this yellow flag will mean he's got enough fuel to make it to the end.
Yeah, That's pretty interesting. Dario Franchitti, we can see in front of our booth, is coming into the pit, so he's going to have no problem towards the end of the race. And certainly with it, I think we're going to find, well, Bobby Rahal actually come past the pit. He's not made a stop either. And judging by Bobby Rahal's fuel consumption calculations so far this year, I'm quite surprised at that, because he's run dry twice on the final lap.
Now then, this means that Franchitti's dropped behind a few guys. Now then, quickly, he's going to end up coming out behind a gaggle of cars here. This is going to be difficult for him when he comes back out. And I wonder, you know, these guys, it looked as though they were hoping to make it through on the fuel. He was being careful, and now he's got a lot of overtaking to do in the latter part of this race. Tough time for Franchitti. You rejoin us just as it goes green flag racing, and Zanardi has the advantage here and is looking great for another victory on this Mid-Ohio sports car course. Still 10 laps to go though, and Greg Moore is there in second place. He's got a couple of laps cars ahead of him, Arndt Meyer and Parker Johnston, but Greg Moore should be able to find his way past. Johnston is sliding around a bit, isn't he? Just ahead of the Canadian.
Yeah, he doesn't... Hopefully Greg Moore gets a run on him there, and Parker Johnson sees him coming. Greg Moore edges him over the road. Greg Moore wasn't very impressed there. I think he's making his feelings felt there to Parker Johnstone as he goes through and sets his sights now on the race leader, who's already disappeared out of view, hasn't he? Yeah. There's Arndt Meyer between them, and Zanardi already several seconds down the road.
Now remember, Greg Moore's not been into the pits for any fuel, any extra fuel that is. So he's going to have to watch the fuel consumption anyway. But Mercedes-Benz power, we've seen how economical that's been this year. He has managed to really extract the most out of his engine already this year on a fuel run. And he may be fairly confident that he can make the finish. What concerns us a little bit is that Dario Franchitti seemed to be on a fuel-saving run, but then came into the pits for fuel, and it's dropped him down to 7th position. And he's now behind the likes of Jimmy Vasser and Gilles de Ferran. And it's going to be tough to overtake them. Meanwhile, let me tell you, Andre Ribeiro's just coming into the pits, and that, we believe, is to serve a penalty. He was speeding in the pit lane. Ribeiro has to wait until the green flag comes out, so Ribeiro into the pits for his penalty. He'll be straight back out again, but that could well lose him some ground.
Back on Dario Franchitti, I think Dario was more struggling than anything else. I think his car really wasn't handling quite how he wanted it to. I'll stand to be corrected on that one, but I think he was really pushing as hard as he could, and I just think that was as fast as the car would go. Of course, he has least experience of everybody around here. He has had one test day here, a couple of test days here, but that's it. And this is a tough racetrack. It takes its toll on the equipment and the drivers as well. Dario's a fit young man. I'm sure the physical attributes won't be a problem, but getting the car to be consistent for a whole race distance, that takes a bit of doing. And, you know, 7th place, it's certainly not what he wanted, but it's still a pretty good run for the young Scot.
Yeah, let's see whether he can overtake a few before the end of the race. Moore's gone through in 2nd place, just looking back down the order. And, well, Franchitti is struggling a little bit to stay on the back of de Ferran. In fact, he's got to watch out because he's got Maurizio Gugelmin behind him again, as he did in the early part of the race. And Gugelmin's looking quite threatening to get past Franchitti. There is the race leader by 3.2 seconds now. He built up a huge advantage before we had that second full course yellow. That was for the car of Michel Jourdain off the circuit. Greg Moore still pushing quite hard. The last lap, in fact, Greg Moore was a fraction quicker than Alex Zanardi. Rahal is now 3rd. Bozell is now 4th. 5th for Jimmy Vasser. 6th for de Ferran there. 7th for Dario Franchitti, with Maurizio Gugelmin right behind him. And there you are, on board with Franchitti running in 7th place, and with Maurizio Gugelmin breathing all over the back of his Reynard.
Yeah, Maurizio Gugelmin certainly didn't want to see that caution. I think without that caution, more teams and drivers would have been struggling to get to the end of this race without that splash and go. And that has cost Maurizio Gugelmin several positions, undoubtedly.
Little puff of smoke from the back of Franchitti's car. That seems to have been there for quite a while. It just makes you wonder whether that may not be part of the reason that he's not been able to set the same sort of pace as he did in the early part of the race, and indeed as in qualifying. Just wonder if there's not some little trouble there. Meanwhile, he's coming up to pass the car of PJ Jones, and still try and keep Maurizio Gugelmin behind him. This is the main battle at the moment, with 4 seconds now the gap between Zanardi and Moore, and we've just got 7 laps to go here in round 13 of the championship. Now let's see, is this going to be an opportunity for Maurizio Gugelmin? No, Franchitti gets past Jones. Now Guterman goes for the inside, and he's done it this time. There's no way that Franchitti could hold him off there, and Dario just couldn't fend off the Brazilian any longer. Franchitti drops back down to 8th place, and Michael Andretti will be the next one trying to put him under pressure in the closing stages of the race.
Nice clean pass there by Mauricio Gugelmin. I think he's pretty upset that his strategy didn't quite work out in his favour, but you know, he's been knocking on the door of a win this year. One of these days it's got to happen for this very, very likeable Brazilian driver. He's been around this sport a long time, and he's driven this season absolutely superb. He certainly made a big mistake in Australia when he took out Jimmy Vasser in the sort of latter stages there, but other than that he's really driven well, and he doesn't deserve all these horrible little problems creeping up, or just circumstances conspiring against him. But a good effort here this afternoon again, and up in the 7th place.
Well, this is the view from the race leader, I do believe, and you can see it's just a completely clear road behind him. There is the Italian Alex Zanardi, and there we wait and wait and wait, and eventually we see the car that's in 2nd position. There it is, it's Greg Moore, the Canadian. I have to say, though, for Greg Moore, this is the sort of result that he needs. He's had a run of 3 non-finishes recently, and for Greg Moore, who has really been a championship contender this year, he's dropped to 5th place in the championship, still on 95 points, though, and still within range. He's still some 32 points behind Alex Zanardi in the championship. But remember, you get 20 points for a win in this championship, so that's really not too bad. But he desperately needs the points here today. For Bobby Rahal, well, he's not really featuring in the championship. He's way down in 13th place, but a 3rd place would be an excellent result for Bobby Rahal here today after what has been a bit of an up and down season, the highlight of which was merely winning in Rio. But remember, one of the lowlights was last week, or 2 weeks ago in Michigan, when he had a very, very heavy impact against the wall. Yeah, he hit the wall hard, didn't he? And that was a major accident there. Certainly that car was junked. A complete new car built up to replace that car damaged at Michigan Speedway. And since then, of course, Bobby Rahal's been off playing golf. He was over in Scotland. He played Royal Troon, of course, the side of this year's British Open. He played St Andrews, and he had a wonderful time. And he's certainly seems to have rejuvenated his driving as well. He's not really been on the pace throughout practice and qualifying, but I think part of that reason is because he was on the harder Goodyear tyres. But a super consistent run this afternoon, no mistakes whatsoever. And the oldest driver in the PPG Kart Series, actually apart from Charlie Neerberg, who's just joined for a couple of races. But Bobby really doing a fine job here for the old guard of the kart PPG circuit. Well, if Gerhard Berger can win in Formula One, there's no reason why Bobby Rahal can't still win in this championship, although he's not going to win it today by the looks of it. But a 3rd place would be a fine result for the team after taking pole position with the other car, and really justified result as well. Greg Moore in 2nd, Bobby Rahal in 3rd. Meanwhile, behind Rahal, there's a bit of a gap back, not too long, it's about 3 seconds back to Brazilian Raul Boesel, who's having a good second half to the season as well. He had a fine 3rd place finish, remember, in the another racetrack that we had not long ago, the Portland race, when he was part of that dramatic finish when Marc Blundell beat Gilles de Ferran, but Raul Boesel was right there as well. And Raul's having another good run here today. Yeah, he always goes well on this racetrack. The super speedway, he's absolutely magnificent on the whole, and this place he absolutely loves. He's gone well several times here in the past. He's had the best finish of 4th on this racetrack, actually in 93, but several other times, you know, he's been in good positions and had problems put him out of contention. A blown engine one time just a couple of years ago when he was driving for Team Rahal, but another good effort by Raul Boesel. Good news this for Bobby as well, isn't the fact that this is a Miller-sponsored race, and of course he's had a long-term association with the Miller Company, the Miller Brewing Company. They've got a lot of guests here today as well, so I think they'll be even more delighted by the fact that he's running so well there in 3rd place. A little bit of cloud, heavier looking cloud opposite us in the commentary box window at the moment, but I don't think we're going to see any rain in the closing stages of this race. It's managed to hold off all day so far, and that's good news. We've seen a good race. Last part of the race perhaps has been a little bit strung out. After the last round of pit stops, it's become clear that Zanardi's advantage that he built up in the early part of the race is enough really to continue his dominance over Greg Moore in 2nd. Yeah, just a touch there of Greg Moore locking up a brake there, clipping the edge of the track. He's really driving hard. 1 minute 8.050 his last time around. He's turning up the wick, and he's actually
closed quite significantly on Alex Zanardi last time around. I think Zanardi is fairly content to take his time. Look at Greg Moore bouncing off the curbs there. He's giving it everything.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Remember, Greg didn't come